Welcome back to the Transform Your Mind to Transform Your Life, the podcast. Today on the show, we're talking about something that every successful person eventually discovers, and that is that success begins in the mind. My guest today is Chris Livezey, and Chris believes that greatness isn't reserved for a lucky few. It comes from how to program your subconscious mind, choose the right environment, and commit to personal growth. He calls it the shortcut to magnificent. Welcome to the show, Chris.
Thank you, Myrna. I'm excited to be here with you.
You're very welcome. I am excited to have this conversation. All right. So, as we dive in, Chris, your message is called The Shortcut to Magnificence. How does magnificence really show up? And why do most people feel it's out of the reach for them?
Well, I think the big thing is really understanding how your mind works, the difference between the conscious mind and the subconscious mind, and realizing that we have the ability to program our subconscious mind with information, people, and places that align with the life that we want to really help manifest it into our life. And you have to know what you want. And luckily for me, at an early age, I started discovering the power of the human mind and had became obsessed with it because there were so many people around me at the time that were following everybody else, following the herds, telling me anything that I wanted to do was going to be impossible. And when I started really learning about the mind, it was only when I was in ninth grade, actually. I was headed down the wrong path, wasn't the most scholastic student, and I was given a book by my father that was written by Zig Ziglar called See You at the Top. And a lot of
Mm.
the principles that I write about and that you talked about in your 6 steps to changing your mindset were applied in a little boy's mind who was diagnosed with cerebral palsy. And he was just a young child at the time. 30 different specialists had told this little boy's parents, for the good of the normal members of the family, that he should be put into an institution. And the parents rejected this idea, really went to work on this boy's body and mind and trying to program his mind with information that he didn't have any symptoms of cerebral palsy. Now, miraculously, fast forward years later, this little boy overcame all symptoms of cerebral palsy, was skating on the neighborhood hockey team, doing as many as 1,100 push-ups, and became extremely well in ninth grade math as a seventh grade student. Now, when I was reading this story, I was a ninth grader. I was told by the teachers, the counselors, the authorities that I was a troubled teen. I was diagnosed with ADD, put in emotional support classes, but something clicked in my mind. And through that story, I felt if this little boy with cerebral palsy could overcome the symptoms of cerebral palsy, well, he was in a far worse condition than me. So I could overcome what people were saying about me. And that's when I really started going to work on my mind. And I didn't fully understand the mind, but I knew that if I wrote down the goals, because based on what Ziegler was saying, and I practiced every day to reach those goals, eventually I would do it. And within about 6 months' time, I worked my way out of emotional support classes, varsity wrestling, baseball. And that's when I gave my first school speech the spring of 1999. And I made the goal that I want to become a motivational speaker. So that's kind of how I got hooked in the whole personal development field. And then, years later, I never went to college. I ended up leaving high school early because I kept continuing my own self-education, reading books on business, entrepreneurship, personal development. Halfway through my senior year, I dropped out of high school. I said I was going to start a business by the time all my friends had graduated college. Exactly what I did. And I felt like if I could become successful enough as a real estate investor by age 30, well, that would give me the credibility to become a speaker. So,
Wow. What a fantastic story. I have a million circlebacks. The first one is I love Zig Ziglar, but I've never heard of that book. So I've got to go and get that book. Number
yes,
one.
I'll see you at the top.
Yeah, I got to go get that book. So, number two, when you were telling your story about the little boy with cerebral palsy, it reminded me of a fantastic story, and I think it's in the book, um, Think and Grow Rich, but I'm not quite sure if it's in that one or not. But
Mm,
it
mm,
was about this little boy that was born without ears. And his father said that he will be able to hear. And he told him he's not disabled and he can be able to hear. And he put that thought in his mind that he's not disabled and he will be able to hear. And do you know that that kid learned to hear without ears? Just because his father programmed his mind and he learned that he can hear through the bone, like, the once you can have the bone can conduct sound, but it's the same thing.
and
Is
that
if
was actually Napoleon Hill. That was
It
Napoleon
was
Hill's
Napoleon Hill,
son.
right?
Yep. And Napoleon Hill talked to his son about how to use your disadvantages of strengths, and that
Right.
he could never bring up the fact that he had a disadvantage over other kids, to find the strength in any disadvantage. And that's how that little boy was able to overcome. Yeah. And he did a lot of unbelievable stuff.
Yes, it is. And one other thing, I mean, I do not talk on this show too much about the subconscious mind. I don't know why. But the last, unless I do it myself, because a lot of times I have solo episodes, and I like the one that you just mentioned, and I concentrate on the mind, and I concentrate about things that guests are not coming on the show to talk about. But I mean, I've been doing this podcast now for about 9 years, and one of my very first um uh, guest interviews was on reprogramming the subconscious mind. And I don't think I've had anybody else talk about that until now. It's you. So that is amazing. Listen, the subconscious mind is a powerful thing. And I know that I need to tap into it. I need to, whenever I'm doing any kind of visualization or any kind of meditation on wealth creating and wealth building, I'm tapping into my subconscious mind because that is what runs the show. So I'm glad that we're talking about that today, and we're talking about being successful and, reprogramming your subconscious mind. And that was a great intro, Chris, that you can, books and, you know, people that inspires us to move from where we are to where we want to be. And that's why I love books. So I'm always reading.
Yeah, and I really loved the show that you had on the 6 step to changing your mindset, because you had talked about parts that I teach people all the time in the power of the subconscious mind. And see, the subconscious mind can't differentiate between what's real or what's imaginary, and
Right.
must accept any information that you program into it. So
Yeah.
it doesn't know the difference between a penny or $1 million, and it doesn't know the difference between if you're diagnosed with cerebral palsy or you're completely normal.
Yeah.
And that was
Yeah.
the real trick that took me years to study in, because then it started in personal development. Then my studies got into more, neuroscience, epigenetics,
Mhm.
Dr. Joe Dispenza type training and meditation,
Nice.
and
We
how to
travel in
heal
the same
yourself.
circles here, boy.
Yeah. And when I was listening to your show, I'm like, this is a perfect fit. We might be
I
able to
know
do
it is.
3 hours every 70 minutes, honestly, because I had so many things I could talk to you about. I took notes on your show, but
Thank
I think
you.
that's the most important message that we can teach people right now, especially with AI coming in to the world, taking over. People are feeling that they're going to be replaced, but yet, science and new research in neuroscience has proven that, our minds work just like a computer program. And
Yeah.
recent research proves that we can program our mind to create our future in any way that we want. And our mind is powerful enough to heal our body
Yeah.
from sickness or disease.
I know. You talk about Joe Dispenza. That's his work. I mean, it's amazing. Yeah. Awesome. All right. Great start. So, so what is the biggest mindset mistakes people make about success? What did you find out?
Well, I think the important thing is it's the goals, and people wanting to say daily affirmations like goals and law of attraction. If you think about a thought over and over again, it's eventually going to come to fruition. But the truth is, it's never going to happen. Most of the time, people's affirmations don't manifest into reality because the real secret magic behind it is the feeling. It's thought plus the emotion to it already coming true. So if you're someone with any type of illness, you want to see yourself and feel as if you're already better. And it's the repetition of the thought plus the feeling. That's what really is going to put you on the path to curing yourself, creating the magnificent life that you really want, taking yourself from poverty into prosperity. And I think that's the biggest misconception in how to achieve the life that we really want. You really, and this is the tricky part, because you can easily think, I want to be more successful, but without the feeling. And you really have to practice the visualization of closing your eyes and feeling the emotion as if the thing that you want had already passed, had already happened.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's why when they teach you with the affirmations, you have to say it like you're in it, like I am, not that I want to. But yes, it's very hard to trick the mind that you are rich when you're broke. So
Because it
so
does put
it's a
you in
difficult
poverty.
thing, and that's why the subconscious mind comes into play because you can get that information to your subconscious mind much easier than you can get it to your conscious mind because your conscious mind knows
Well,
that you're lying.
and funny you said that. So when I got started in real estate, I was living in the suburbs of Philadelphia. And when I started my real estate career, I was 23 years old. I ended up going into a pretty rough neighborhood of Philadelphia. And I was saying I bought an investment property as a rental, but I was still about an hour outside of the city. So I decided to move into that rental property, the first property I ever bought, so I could, you know, find more deals within that neighborhood. Now, most people in that area were living in a poverty driven mindset, dying to get out of there and move somewhere else. I was moving in to get rich. So
Mhm.
see, it's the different in perception.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
what I
yeah.
also realized is some of the people in the low income areas that I was working in had more potential than the people I went to high school with who came from the more wealthy suburb areas. So that's when I started realizing everything's based on perception.
Yeah.
Like if I hold up this book and I say, Myrna, what do you see? You're going to tell me I see the cover of The Shortcut to Magnificence. Now I'm going to tell you, I see some words in a picture of myself, and you and me are going to argue all day long about we're both looking at the same thing. But until I can come over and see it from your perception, you're looking at the front, I'm looking at the back. So we're
Mhm.
both right looking at it from our perception. But until I can actually take back and see it from a different point of view, and that this is how our belief system is powerful. Our
Mhm.
perception is based on our belief system and the information that has been programmed into our subconscious mind. So when I moved into a poverty driven area to get rich, I could have taken any one of those kids in that neighborhood and made them just as wealthy as I was getting. It had no difference. It's all about the programming in the subconscious mind.
Yeah, yeah, of course. I absolutely totally believe that. And those neighborhoods, I mean, that's why a lot of investors go into them because they do have a poverty mindset. And what my book that I wrote, yeah, the mind is it's it can do so much. It can do so much. And
And
I
it
I am so glad that I get to talk about this every week on this show.
Yeah, because you're making a difference with information that can really impact the lives of millions of people. I
Yeah.
once heard 2% of the people think, 3% of the people think they think, and 95% of people would rather die than think.
No,
And that's
don't
because
think, right?
of the program.
Exactly.
And you are helping people wake up to start
Yes.
having a different perspective on their life that they can achieve stuff. And if you've came from poverty and overcame it, and I have done the same,
Yeah,
it's people like us that are out there
it
trying
can
to make a
happen.
difference.
It can happen. Yes. And that's why, this book is so spectacular. Um, I got to read yours and and see what you're talking about in yours too. All right. So let's talk about some practical ways that people can start reprogramming their mind. How do you teach them to do that in your book or?
So a lot of who we are, I teach, is based on our environmental heredity. So it's the information, people, and places that you're surrounding yourself around on a daily basis. So, but I think the most important thing for people to figure out is really what it is they want to do, and let your imagination go wild with that. And then put together a list of everything you want. Is it wealth? How much wealth? 1 million, 5 million, 10 million? I know people that make a couple $1 million a year who are very unhappy people. And I know people that have their own online business that make 100 grand a year that are 10 times happier, but they still have the freedom. They might not have the exact same lifestyle with the big house and the fancy boats and everything, but they're living a better lifestyle. So it's important to get clarity on what you want. Once you do that, then you can start surrounding yourself around people that can help put you on that path. And you want to understand that, see, your conscious mind can accept or reject any information that doesn't align with the life that you want. So before you tie an emotion to a thought, if it doesn't align with the life you want to reject that information. You're someone that wants to start a business and you turn the news on and all they're talking about is this is the worst time to start a business, and you start tying emotions to that, well, you're never going to start a business. So you want to find people who are already successful at running a business, the type of business that you want to start, and follow those people. So it's important to understand that your environmental heredity is the most important play to, once you know what you want, you have to program your mind with the information that aligns with helping you get there.
Yeah, that is very true. Listening to Grant Cardone the other day, and he was saying that um, his business was most successful during the pandemic when everybody else's business were failing, because again, it's his perception and what he believed that he can do. Yeah, so mindset is important in everything, whether it's being successful in the business, healing yourself in relationships. It's all about how you definitely think. Um, so let's expand on the environment versus hereditary. Can you explain how our environment shapes our success? So we can expand on, yeah, we know that there's several generations that live in the HUD, or you know, um, what you call them, projects, right? The grandmother, the daughter, and then the children. So that's their environment, and they've learned, and maybe they can't do any better. Um, and then you have the rich kids that they see wealth. Everybody is, they're one of the books I'm reading, they're talk. In fact, the same book, the grandfather is saying, "Oh, this kid is 11. I'm going to enroll him in entrepreneurial school because he needs to take over the business." So, so how is that working as far as our mindset go?
I would say if you're someone that has more of a poverty type of background, you have more of an advantage because you're usually more hungry. Now, all the research that I've ever done, if you study any musician, actor, baseball player, I mean, you name it, they've all went through the same type of path. They might not know what you and I are talking about now, but they why they were doing it, but they would agree to everything that they're saying. And most of them came from nothing. Actors, musicians, rappers, they started off in projects. They were living in a car trying to get auditions, and they'll all agree that they had to believe in themselves first and they had to keep going after it, keep going after it. But they knew what they wanted and they surrounded themselves with the people that could help put them on that path and not fall into a victim of somebody else's beliefs. So once you know what you want, if it's greater than your current surroundings and the people that you're associated with, you got to be careful who you're sharing that information with, because you're going to get a lot of people telling you, "Oh, you can't do that, Chris. How can you get into real estate? You dropped out of high school. You don't have any formal education. You were in emotional support classes. You want to be an author and a speaker and a real estate investor. That's impossible." Well, I understood the mind. I rejected the ideas and beliefs of other people, and I started following guys like Wayne Dyer, Napoleon Hill, Bob Proctor, Michael Beckwith, Les Brown. Anybody that was in a position doing the things that I wanted to do. I just programmed my mind with that information. And then sure enough, through time, and this could be months or years, I don't know if there's a time frame anyone knows. I say the greater the want, the harder the obstacle. But if
Mm.
you know what you want and you stick with it long enough, you may not know how long it's going to take before you get it, but I guarantee you'll get it because this is science. Albert Einstein says everything is energy. That's all there is to it. Match the frequency to the reality you want, and you cannot help but get that reality. This is not philosophy, this is physics. And that's Einstein. So it's the
Yeah.
same thing. All we're trying to do, know what we want and match the frequency to what we want. So you want to start, if you want to become a pro baseball player, what does Michael Jordan say? He failed the ninth grade team, but every day after school, was he out playing with his friends? Was he out going to the parties? Was he going to bars? No, he stayed home. He disciplined himself and he practiced every single day. And look at where he came. Now, anybody that achieved success that started with nothing has that same exact story. And actually, the kids who are born into a more wealthy family, I would say, are less likely to be just as successful because they're given
They don't
more
have
to
the
them,
hunger.
but they
You're
don't
very
have
right.
the hunger or they're not
Mhm.
there to earn it. And when I went into a poverty-driven area in Philadelphia, the some of the best people I worked with were the people from the neighborhood, not the people I brought in from the suburbs. You know, it was different. They were hungry, they were loyal, and they just had more fire in them to succeed. And given the opportunity and this type of information, then anybody can achieve the things that they want.
Well, that's very, very true. And I know you love Les Brown, with one of his famous saying is, "You got to be hungry,"
Yeah.
right? And there are more rags to riches stories than wealthy people that were given an inheritance and, succeeded. Nobody talks about them. But you're very right. You've got to want something different. You've got to say to yourself, "I am not going to be like, my mother and my father, and I want to be different. I want to succeed." And that's one of the reasons I think that I succeeded, because I decided that I needed generational increase for my kids. And that was my why. So yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm not sure if I was hungry, but I definitely wanted something better.
And you had a burning desire
I
to
had a
do.
burning desire. Right, right. Napoleon Hill.
Yep.
Got to get that desire going, right?
Yeah. And I think
I
that's the
love it.
important,
Okay.
and that's the hardest part to all this personal development stuff. It's really once you know it, it's now practicing it every day until it becomes so repetitious that it becomes an addiction, and then it's getting over the difficult challenges along the way. In 2009, July 17th, I'm at the high point of my real estate career. I'm making tons of money. A lot of my friends who went to college had quit their jobs to come work for me. I'm out in LA at a conference with a big world-class speaker. I get a call from my younger sister. Oh my God, Chris, you're not going to believe it. Our brother died. Our brother just he didn't wake up from his sleep. Now, I was 25 years old. My brother would have been 20, going on his 28th birthday. This is July 17th. Now, that's a curveball that life can throw you. You can be the most positive person in the world, but what do people do in a situation like that? Now,
Wow.
see, I understood there's a law of polarity that states there's an opposite to everything. So up, down, boy, girl, hot, cold, good or bad. Even in the worst type of situation, there has to be an equivalent good. And the only thing I could think of at the time, because I still had the goal that I wanted to become a speaker, I was still in the process of learning this information, but I believed it and felt it in my heart that this was the right stuff. And I knew that one day I'm going to be on stage speaking. And what if a little kid comes up to me and says, "Well, Chris, that's easy for you to say. Anybody can live a magnificent life, but you never had a death of a family member.
Mm.
Your husband didn't die. Your wife never passed away. You never lost a child." Well, in that moment, I knew that if I got through the loss of my brother and found some hope and uh, some motivation within that, well, that would help me achieve, getting somebody else on the path to success further down the line. So it was changing my perception of it and finding something good. But that's the biggest battle is once you know what you want and you're trying to condition your mind with the right information, you don't always have control of the circumstances outside of us, but you always have control over how you think.
Yeah.
and the emotions that you attach to it. And that in that moment, I could have either went down a downward spiral or found hope and joy in what I could do with that.
That's amazing. And you got there right away, or it took you some years?
I mean, because I was already studying, I knew, but it really wasn't until this is 2009. I think after my brother passed, I knew I needed to learn it. And I started being coached in 2011, 2012 by Bob Proctor, who was in The Secret. So I had a year-long coaching program with him, and it was really Bob who helped me understand the difference between the conscious and subconscious mind. Up
Okay.
until that point, I felt like I almost had a magic wand, but it was very generic. It was I'm writing down my goals, I'm trying to align information, but I didn't understand on a neurological level like what how I was
Mhm.
changing my mindset. It
Mhm.
wasn't until I really got coached
Yeah.
by Bob.
And that is why it's so important to do the work, because I can tell immediately when someone has done the work, because you understand these things and you don't go into a rabbit hole. I mean, yeah, I mean, loss is bad. Unexpected loss is bad. But you know what? I live with the consciousness that I know that tomorrow is not promised. And I know that any moment, either I can croak out or, my loved ones can croak out, because tomorrow is not promised. And I live with that consciousness. And yeah, I'm almost thinking ahead of the time. I mean, how are you going to handle it? That kind of thing. So yes, I mean, but for you to be able to say, yeah, um, if I handle this in a certain way, or I benefit or learn from this experience, I can also share that experience with someone, right? So that's why I asked you, did you get there immediately, or it took some time to get there? Because yeah, a lot of times, in fact, almost everybody that I talked to on this show that was a coach has come through one of those experiences, but they had to go through the tunnel before they came to the light. Not many people, are in the light immediately. And if they're in the light immediately, then there would be like somebody like a sad guru, or, a mystic who is living with that consciousness every day. And they're become like what we call an enlightened being. But yeah, I mean, the Bible says that you can everything that happens to you can work out for your good and work out for your benefit. And that's the way to think about loss, think about ups and downs, think about anything. You know what I mean? And it's a good way to program your mind that, yeah, what is the good in this? What is the benefit? Look for it, because if you look for it, it is there, right? So excellent. Good story on that. So, one of the things I want to ask you before we wrap up is that you talk about daily deposits into your brain fund. I never heard that one. So, what are the daily habits that help someone build a powerful mindset?
So one of my principles is motivation study hour, which sounds like, oh, what's motivation study hour? But just like I tell people to go to the gym to work on your health, people understand you have to go to the gym for an hour a day if you want to stay physically fit and healthy. Well, the same applies for your mind. You have to devote an hour a day. If you're really trying to change, devote an hour a day for 30 days to information that aligns with the life that you want, because what you're doing is it's through the repetition that's helping yourself reprogram your mind to put you on the magnificent life that you really want to be living. So that there, and I tell people, even if it's 30 minutes in the morning, 30 minutes at night, like I go to the gym 6 days a week for 2 hours. When I'm at the gym, I don't listen to any music. I'm listening to a seminar, or I'm listening to your podcast on the 6 steps to changing your mindset. I'm listening to something I can benefit from. And I also have an 8 to 8 rule. So between 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., if I'm driving in my car, I don't listen to any music. I got to listen to a podcast, a seminar, something that I can learn from that aligns with my goals and the things I want most in life. And that's the daily deposit. So if you're doing that, it's just like going to the gym. Everybody wants to look healthy and feel healthy, but you got to put in the work. As Jim Rohn said, you can't hire somebody to do your push-ups for you. You actually got to get out there and
Gotta
do the
do them
push-ups.
yourself. I never heard that one either. I like that one.
And the same's for your mindset. You want to practice, every day between 30 to 60 minutes, really programming your mind with Transform Your Mind podcast, because that's going to help you out. But when
Yeah,
you get home from work, and here's the problem. Most people are working a 9 to 5 job. They get home from work, they want to turn on the news to feel like they have an idea of what's going on in the world. And then it's nothing but negativity,
negativity. Yeah,
division, splitting people up, hate, war. It's all this negative nonsense that really is kind of opposite of everything I've ever learned, about the human mind and how connected we are to each other, where it doesn't matter if you're black, white, Asian, what country you're from. There's only one mind, there can
yeah,
only be one God, and we're
yeah.
all connected. So everything else, to me, just seems like nonsense and a way for certain people higher up in government and media to program us to live a more confined life.
Exactly. And they
And that's
program
what
fear.
yeah.
That's what they program in those news things. I don't watch it either. But that's amazing. Yeah. Well, I do the same thing. When I go to the gym, I need to be music because I need to be inspired to work out. But I walk 6 days a week, and I'm listening to, books and podcasts the same way, and that's how I keep myself, you know, in the the knowledge and the mindset and all the things, and also allows me to have great conversations on here because I know a lot of things, and because I'm reading every single day, and then of course I read at night too before I go to bed. So amazing. All right, so
So
let's
it's the
talk
mind. So
about.
you got the mind body connection down, and that's
Yes,
the best
yes.
thing. That's all you can ask for. Mind body
Body
connection.
connection. Yes, it's very important. Yes. All right. So let's talk about your book now, The Shortcut to Magnificence. Why did you write it, and what do you want people to walk away with after reading?
So I wrote it because I wanted to become a speaker at the beginning. And then I felt like as I expanded my own education and I got into Napoleon Hill's work, I felt like I was still young enough and naive enough to say, you know what, I want to do exactly what Napoleon Hill did. I'm going to spend 20 years of my life, but now in the early 2000s till 2020s, I'm like, I'm going to study everything that I can in the personal development field to revolutionize the personal development industry as Napoleon Hill did. He studied 500 of the world's most successful people in the early 1900s. I figured I would study all the different speakers like the Les Browns, Wayne Dyer, Michael Beckwith, Bob Proctor, and I would take all that information that would take me 20 years, put it into one book where I'm the only one in the world who can tell people I teach the shortcut to success, because most people say there are no such
There's no
things.
shortcuts. You got to take the stairs, right?
Yeah, you got to take the stairs, but there is, and if you know what you want and you get a mentor, that's a shortcut. So I tell
Right.
people I took the long way to bring everybody else the shortcut, and what I really want people to get out of it is that anybody listen to this has so much more potential than what you're being told on the outside world. And after 20 years of studying this, it all comes down to your mindset, which is why this podcast is such a perfect fit for me, because it's all in the way of understanding your mind and that you have the ability to program your mind with the life that you really want. And there's no way that you can fail.
Yeah. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Wow. When I agreed to do the interview, I mean, I didn't even know that we are going to be talking so much about the mind and mindset and reprogramming and all that. That's amazing. You are an exact fit for what I want to, impart to my listening audience, about the powers of the mind. And if you do transform your mind, you transform your life. That's my tagline, right? And
And
you're
that's
living,
mine
breathing.
too. We're on the same mission, Myrna. And that's why thank you for allowing me to be a guest on your show. And,
You're very
we're
welcome.
on the same path, trying to
Yeah,
help
well,
people
thank you
in
for
weight up society.
confirmation that it can happen. Amazing, amazing. All right. So, where can our listeners pick up a copy of your book? What's your website? What's your social media handles?
So everything is just based on my name, chrislivezey.com. So ChrisLivezey.com. And then I'm on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook.
Under your name as well?
Yep.
Okay. Awesome. All right. Well, guys, I am going to have an article on the show page with what Chris and I talked about today. I will link out to his book. I will link out to his website and also tag him on Instagram when I post the a clip of our conversation. There was lots and lots of nuggets in this conversation. I cannot believe that we had such a powerful conversation in such a short time. So we learned today that success doesn't start in the bank account, it starts in the mind. And when we change our thinking, surround ourselves with the right environment, and commit to learning and mentorship, we begin at creating a life that reflects our highest potential. So, so Chris, so we're gonna wrap up now. Is there any last words that you want to share? Any words of encouragement?
Just to tell people to take the shortcut, become magnificent, and start studying, how powerful your mind is, and don't lose hope in yourself. If I can do it with my background of a troubled teen, no formal education, anything I put my mind to, I was able to achieve. If I can do it, I guarantee you can do it. And I'm here for you to support you. Myrna's here to support you. So stay with it.
Yes, beautiful. Thanks. And thanks for sharing that story about the guy, the kid with the cerebral palsy. I never heard that one before, but that was a beautiful analogy and beautiful story. All right, guys. Okay, Transformers. Thank you for tuning in to this episode today. If this conversation resonated with you, remember, share it with a friend and leave a comment or review. Thank you, Chris, for being on the show. You're one of the most perfect guests I've had on here because our minds are connected. We have the
Yeah.
same we have the
Indeed.
same outlook. So thank you for being on the show. Thank you guys for tuning in. Until next time, namaste.